Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm excited to be with you guys tonight. I have a few things to talk about, and it's a little different. So I'm at my brother's house tonight. So that's, you're seeing his wonderful little kitchen in the background. I've been staying with him for the weekend. So I just am excited for you guys to be with me tonight. I'm excited to be able to talk to you guys. I think this is going to be just a great night. The things we're going to be talking about are healing your history, like you're healing your family history even. We're going to be talking about forgiveness, and we're going to be talking about how or what to do instead of ghosting somebody. For those of you that are some of my regulars, if you guys could be referring to that little thing I sent you a while back, that would be awesome for me to help me out with that. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to talk about. Now, so earlier this summer, I took an online course that was by a therapist. I don't remember exactly what her specialty is or whatever, but she was a therapist. And the course was called Healing Your Family History. And it did a lot to help put a lot of things in my family history in perspective. And so I wanted to share some of that with you guys tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about it in relation to being single adults, not just, I don't want to go like all over the place with our family history stuff because it could be a lot. But I will use some examples that may not necessarily, be single adult related, but just so that you can get an idea. Does that make sense? So there's 5 points to this, and that is, or 5 points to basically healing our families to help ourselves kind of thing. And that is awareness. Being aware of it's more than half the battle. Overcoming judgments and fears, especially of ourselves. Getting past Groundhog Day, we'll talk about that in a minute. And finding the treasure, and then making a spiritual connection. So we're going to go through this briefly. I mean, I took a course that was a couple months long. So I'm just going to give you some highlights of this. And if you do want to get the book, I know I've referred to a few books this year, but this one is called Healing Your Family History by Rebecca Linder Hensey. She's awesome. I know her personally, and she's just a great woman. So I would recommend this if you want to do this. Let me get these other two. We're waiting. Okay. And there was even a foreword by Stephen Covey. So just to kind of give you an idea of how valid this is and how wonderful that this is, it is amazing. She gives a quote. It's from an inscription on the heritage statue at the National Archives in Washington, D.C., and it's the heritage of the past is the seed that brings forth the harvest of the future. And if we think about that, so we've talked a lot about different aspects of relationships, different aspects of being single, different things we need to talk about, agree on, whatever, to have a relationship with somebody. But I want to talk about, there's some people that just kind of feel stuck, or kind of feel like they can't move forward in a relationship, or feel like they're afraid of bringing in the baggage from wherever into a new relationship or whatever. So I want to try to talk about that. Let's just kind of get a discussion happening about that a little bit. And as we go along talking about these topics, I do want to try to get some dialogue in on this, okay? All right. Oh, and if you're new, so we've got a lot of new people in here tonight, which is kind of cool. So if you are new, you are definitely welcome to make comments when you want to. Just unmute yourself and make the comment. We just ask that we keep it related to the topic as much as possible. You're welcome to share an example in your life. We just ask that you just don't get into we want to avoid the bashing, the blaming, that kind of thing. So we don't want to bash the exes or the leaders or that type of thing. So if we can just try to keep it, again, share your experience if you feel like you want to share your experience. But we do want you to just keep it in a discussion. And also, just so you know, we, and part of the reason I have a lot of the regular panelists that I've asked to be on here is we don't necessarily always agree. And that's actually a good thing, because we get to see different perspectives. We were all coming at this with different perspectives, different life experiences, everything. So we do encourage you to share your opinion, whether you agree with what I'm saying or the other people are saying, whatever. All we ask is that we just don't argue or debate. You're welcome to share your opinion if it's differing, totally welcome. But we're glad that you're here, okay? All right. So first of all, being aware of some family patterns that you may be bringing into your relationships, which may have been the cause of some of the breakdown of those, may or may not, who knows. But either way, we sometimes we have some limiting family belief patterns that have just been handed down forever. For instance, this is an example that for me helped me to get what she was talking about. And she said there was a woman that she would make a ham every year at Christmas. And they loved this ham. It was like the best ham ever. But every year they would cut both ends off before they put it in the pan to cook the ham. Well, the daughter went to her mom and she said, "Mom, why do we cut off both ends of the ham?" She says, "I don't know. My mom taught me to do it this way. It's the way we've always done it. So that's why we do it." So the mom called grandma up, and she said, "Hey, Mom, why do we cut both ends of the ham off? Of the ham?" And she said, so that it would fit in my pan. And so all those years, her mom had this pan that was a certain size, and she had to cut the ends off the ham so that it would fit in her pan. Well, she taught her daughter how to do it that way, and her daughter had a bigger pan, but she still cut the ends off because that's what her mom did. So then the daughter was doing that, right? So you just kind of get an idea of how sometimes family patterns, family belief patterns have been passed down, and there was really no reason for it other than it was accommodating at the time. So some family beliefs, and we can talk about finances here. A couple of family beliefs affecting finances might be: I must have a lot of money to be classified as successful, or I must work hard to have money or else I don't deserve to have it, or I'm a better person if I work hard and do without. And there's several others, like for instance, if I have too much money, I'll be prideful and God will punish me by taking it all away. Or I'm better off rich than poor because poor people are bad. You get what I'm saying? I don't know what your family belief patterns have been passed down, but generally speaking, most families have some sort of financial belief pattern passed down, okay? Another family belief pattern affecting health and wellness, or health and physical well-being, could be people who are sick or weak and bad. I remember my father saying something like, people who get cancer are being punished by God. And I remember thinking, that seems stupid. That doesn't sound like. I did not take on that belief pattern because I did not agree with it. Of course, I didn't agree with most of what my father taught me, but that was a belief pattern he was trying to instill in me, and I'm like, I don't think so, because good people get cancer, and that doesn't mean that they're bad, So another belief pattern might be people who are sick are good. It's best to have the worst case of the disease, or to be ill enough to need hospital care. Some people wear their health issues as if it's a badge of honor. Have you ever met somebody when you're talking to them and all they're talking about is their health issues? Oh, well, I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got that, and oh, I can't do this because I have to do this, and because I have this. You ever heard anybody talk like that about their health? It's almost as if they're wearing it like a badge of honor, okay? And sometimes that is a belief pattern that's been passed down that they may not be aware of. And I'm sure they don't want to treat it like a badge of honor, but it's something that sometimes they've just passed down. Some people believe they must be thin to be good enough. Some people believe they must be heavier to be good enough because thin people are bad. I must look young to have value. I'm better if I'm older and wiser. It's good to appear older. You know what I mean? Like whatever your family belief pattern is on that one. It could be the same thing about education. It could be the same thing about career, about spirituality, about relationships. So let's get into some family belief patterns that may be affecting your relationships. For instance, it's better to do everything myself because if others help me, it shows that I'm weak and not capable. Anybody feel like that? Women are less valuable than men, or men are less valuable than women. Men are better than women, or women are better than men. Men can't be trusted, or women can't be trusted. People of a certain race are superior. I must be on time to events. If I'm tardy, I'm bad. I must keep my house clean or else I'm not good enough. The needs of others are more important than my own. Relationships hurt, so I'm better off alone. Marriage is bad. Love is painful. And this is common with families with a history of abuse. Okay? So let's think about those, and you may have your own. Again, you do not have to share these with this, but I just want you to just try to process just being aware. So I want you to think about this, and if you want to take notes, if you want to write this down, that'd be awesome because it may be helpful to you if you do this. But I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to think about the answers, okay? So what is it that you want most in your life right now? If you had to think about that, what would you want most in your life right now? Could be you want to make more money, you want a better relationship, you want a relationship with somebody, you want a better job, you want to feel happy, you want to create more peace at home, whatever. What do you want right now? Okay? And then is what you want different from what your parents or your ancestors experienced? Third question, do you feel that your mom and dad love or loved themselves fully? And then you may want to think about what traditions were handed down. Do you feel like that they deserved, or that they felt like that they deserved to have money? Did they fear that there would never be enough? Or did they come across like a victim? Like, you know, so-and-so is doing this to me, or something bad is happening to me, or whatever, right? And then if they did come across like being a victim, were they trusting or suspicious? And how might they have contributed to problems in their relationships? So there's others, you know, even with your mom, you know, was your father content with the job? Do you feel that way? Did he believe that he deserved to be happy while he worked? Did he use his career as an opportunity to pursue a passion or to complete his life's purpose? If not, why? And then in what ways am I like my parents and unwilling to recognize it? Reviewing the beliefs that belong to both you and your parents, identify those that prevent you from getting what you want most in your life right now. And then since your environment also plays an important role in how we feel about ourselves, take a minute to record one or more beliefs that you've learned from society that may prevent you from feeling good about yourself. Okay? So I want you to think about that as we go along. So one of the things that we really need to work on is not after we are aware of whatever our belief patterns are that we need to work on, or what it is that you want in your life right now that you may feel prevented from being able to get that. What is preventing you from getting what you want right now? Okay? We're going to talk about a few things of judgments and fears, because a lot of us have, and please feel free to jump in anytime if you want to make a comment. I'm just going to be talking for a while, okay? So, but again, if you have a comment, want to say anything about anything I'm talking about, please jump in. So when we overcome different judgments and fears, a lot of times, I have this saying that I taught my kids while they were growing up is, you cannot build somebody up when you're putting them down. So if you want somebody to do better, maybe to have better behavior or to be nice or whatever, you can't go and attack them or put them down, right? So you do want to avoid things like mudslinging, being overly critical, being overly judging, overly demeaning, or not even demeaning, period. You don't want to be demeaning at all. Definitely you want to avoid that because if you want to build somebody up, if you want to change someone's behavior for the better, building them up is way better than putting them down. Like, for instance, I remember when I was growing up, I was probably about 10 pounds heavier than I am now. And my parents, well, my mom mainly, but my parents would give me a hard time about my weight. And they would say things like, Paula, you got such a pretty face. If you just lose, 10 or 15 pounds, you'd look so much better. Or my father wouldn't be that nice. Usually he'd be like, calling me fat or stupid or ugly or whatever, right? And so it wasn't so nice. Let's just say that. So it was really a challenge for me to overcome that belief pattern that I had of myself because I believed them. They were my parents, right? They would know. So sometimes you have to be aware of that problem. So I became aware of the belief pattern that my parents handed down to me about my weight, and having to be. And I worked through this like 20 years ago. So this is like not like it was over the summer I did this, but it was something that I had to be okay with. That I was okay with my weight. It was totally fine. And there have been other instances and other belief patterns passed down that I was able to block if I felt like it was negative or would negatively affect me. Mudslinging was something my family was good at. I grew up in Alabama, where a lot of my family were pretty racist, and they were very judging and very critical and very holier than thou kind of thing. And it was something for me that I had to consciously be aware of to work through so that I overcame some of those same patterns. In relationships, though, especially if you've been through anything negative, or if you've been through any type of abuse, if you've been through any type of a divorce or whatever, we had this tendency to be afraid of the future. And so we build up a wall. And we want to block it because we don't want to feel that hurt again, right? We're like, I'll do about anything, but let's just build up that wall, because that's a wall of protection. Had a conversation earlier with my brother, who is agnostic, but he had broken up with a girlfriend who's also the mother of his daughter within the last year and a half or so. And they are now talking about getting back together. And I asked him, I said, so what is preventing you from getting back with her? Because he couldn't give me a reason that he didn't want to be with her, because he thought, she's awesome. I think she's awesome. And he said, well, the only thing I'm worried about is, what if it doesn't work out? And I said, Jason, you can what if yourself to death with any relationship. He said, well, you're right on that one. I said, so you're letting fear prevent you from being with a woman that you love and from being with the mother of your child. He said, yep, basically. But no one had ever said it that way to him. And so he was able then to recognize that he was allowing fear to rule his life, or in that relationship aspect, not in all aspects, but at least when it came to the relationship with her. So sometimes we do have to face the fears that hold up that wall. Just something to think about, okay? We are going to be talking about things that parents did right too, because parents didn't. We're not going to talk about everything negative. There are good and bad things that parents have done. I learned how to make some good old squash from my mama and some good old cornbread. Okay. I learned how to go to church every Sunday. I learned how to stick with my standards and my testimony from my parents. I mean, there's been a lot of good things. So sorry if I gave the impression that everything's bad. What I'm working on is healing some of the negative stuff with family history. Some of the things that we've talked about in the past kind of put up some walls and block us from different belief things. Okay. So sometimes people do allow the fears to prevent them from moving forward, from putting up those walls. I was really good at that. I was so good at those walls. Oh my goodness, I was good. I used to even tell people that any man that I would date would have to show up with a really good tool belt, because they'd have to break down some walls to get through this, because there were some pretty thick walls. And thankfully, that was not the case, because I was able to work through them myself. And that is generally what needs to happen, because if you've got walls built up, if you've got fears, if you've got any type of negative mind blocking or whatever going on, then you're going to need to work through that to be able to have a healthy relationship. Okay, because there are some though that will get into kind of playing the victim. We talked about that a little earlier. Of you know, the he did this, she did this, you know, this bad thing's happening to me or whatever, and just trying to get over the victim mentality. It's easy to get there. It's not as easy to overcome, but it is something that you will need to do. You will need to work on the victim mentality, discovering different conflicts and learning where to look for conflicts that can be, I don't know, just need to be talked out, and just make sure that you're on a good journey with wherever you're at, with whatever you feel like is conflicting with your belief pattern. Okay. But overcoming the judgments and fears of from within, for women especially, is such a challenge for a lot of us, because we get it not only from other people, but we get it from society in general. So sometimes there's a lot of judgments, there's a lot of fears, there's a lot of criticisms. Over the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or so, I've really worked hard, after doing the whole Strengths Finder thing, to look for the good versus the bad in people. It is human nature to look for the bad. It is just human nature. And it is something that I think is really good for us to work on, if we can walk up to somebody and tell them something good about them, and you actually think that, you believe that. Sometimes you may just have to make a conscious effort to do that in the beginning, but it is a good way to be. You become more grateful for people, and you become more aware of their strengths instead of looking for their weaknesses. And it's been really quite enlightening. But sometimes we do go about our day-to-day routine, or maybe our month-to-month routine, feeling like we're living out a Groundhog Day. Do you guys remember the movie Groundhog Day? Where he's like reliving the same day over and over and over, and how do I get out of this pattern, right? Sometimes we have this pattern, and it wasn't a horrible day. I don't think it was anyway, from what I can remember the movie. It wasn't a horrible day, he just wanted to have a different day. You know, he already knew how it was going to end. He already knew everything, and sometimes it just helps to get past. For instance, if you're dealing with emotional insecurities, you've got to get past those, be able to have a different day, to have a different type of relationship with people, or to have a different friendship with somebody, or a dating relationship, or whatever. You also need to recognize that manipulative games don't work. There's a lot of people that think, well, if I do this to them, then they'll do this for me, or whatever. And you really want to get past that. That's not a great thing. you do want to give up control to develop trust. When you realize the only person you can control is yourself, it is so awesome. And just appreciating and valuing the other people and their own strengths and their own greatness and how the Lord made them. And being able to trust that they are doing their best right now with what they know, with who they are, with their own life experiences and whatever. So earlier, we asked the question, what is it that you want most in your life right now? So take a minute. What is it right now that you want most in your life? And you want to then say, well, how do I go about getting what I dream of? How do I go about getting what I want? And then next is you want to ask yourself, is your method of fulfilling your needs effective? And does it work? You want to explore the ways your behaviors do and don't succeed. Depending on what it is that you want most right now, even in a relationship, if that's the case, or if it's something else, right? How is it that you're showing up to meet your own needs? And then even if you don't like your present circumstances, I want you to just try to identify why you're uncomfortable, or why the reasons, it says identify the reasons why your uncomfortable situation is actually somewhat comfortable. Sometimes it's hard for people to make changes or to do something a little different or to do something out of their comfort zone, right? So that's what I'm going to suggest to you is why is it that right now, maybe if you have some negative belief pattern, why is that still comfortable for you? If you feel like you're not worth loving, why is that comfortable for you? Okay, so just things like that. Sometimes you want to just take a look into your past. You just want to review that answer. Why is that comfortable? And then what did I decide about life and myself when my needs weren't met as a child? That may or may not benefit you. And then I want you to take a moment and just think about it and just visualize how it would feel getting what you want and feeling the way you want to feel, to be in that healthy spot of doing that. Now, we all know that opposition leads to growth, and challenges or that type of thing just lead to growth. So we can learn from even negative patterns, right? We can learn from different weaknesses, because there's a lot of treasures in that. There's a lot of good that can come out of that. For instance, with my father and my mom giving me a hard time about my weight, I was able to have a healthy attitude toward food and teach my kids a healthy attitude toward food while they were growing up. They did not one time see me on a diet. I was never on no diet. I was not doing that. I just learned about the word of wisdom. I taught them how to eat healthy. We still had cookies, cakes, and pies. I taught them how to have a balance and moderation in all things. That was my belief pattern. And that was a healthy thing that came out of something negative, right? So I could have played the victim role and thought, oh, well, my parents tell me I'm this, so I guess I'm this. I didn't do that because it didn't feel right. It wasn't the pattern I wanted to pass on to my kids. And somehow, I don't even know how, but somehow I was aware of this as a teenager. I just remember feeling like and praying that the patterns of abuse that I had experienced as a kid would not continue on with my kids. Sadly, they also experienced abuse. But I can almost guarantee you that of my 5 kids, none of them are going to be abusive to their children. So that cycle of abuse will end. It just didn't end the way I wanted it to. So we can learn from different things that we've gone through in our lives and different experiences that we've had. My kids have learned from the negative experiences they've had. They've also learned, there's some good that have come out of it. Their testimonies, some of them, have really strong, rock hard, solid testimonies. Others of them are still trying to figure life out. So it just kind of depends on where you find that treasure. And like I said earlier, there are good things that came out of childhood. Even those of us that did experience abuse, I know I've talked to several people who grew up in abusive homes and still had good things happen. There's still a lot of good that came out of different things. And so if we can just focus on that and focus on the good in any challenging situation that we're in, even from something that hard as divorce or as hard as the death of a spouse or loss of a loved one or whatever, if we can find the good in that, what was that learning experience for? There are different challenges and adversities that we're going to go through that the purpose is for us to learn from it. And only you can find out what it is that you need to learn from that. And there's a treasure in all of that. There's a treasure that's going to come from every relationship that we're in. I don't know about every. Most relationships that we're in, we're not going to do the all or nothing thing, right? So I want you to think about that and think about if you did experience negative relationships, whether it be growing up, through marriage, or whatever, ask yourselves, what character traits or behaviors do I most dislike in others and why? What characteristics of others or myself stir emotion within me? And then you want to talk about, you want to think about what it is that you want to be like, what it is that you want to become. Maybe, I know for me, I didn't want to be like my mom, sadly, when I was growing up. And then as I got older, there were some things that I liked about my mom and some things not so much. And I'm sure my kids feel the same way. There are things about me that they're going to love and things about me that'll be like, I'm not going to do that one, Mama. My daughter's even said, Mom, I'm not going to eat like you. That's what she's told me. Like, all right, you do what you want to do. So anyway, but when you've decided who you want to emulate, I want you to focus on that and focus on someone that you want to take after. And who do I want to be like and why? Who do I admire the most and what characteristics draw me to that person? In what ways am I similar to the person I want to resemble or the person I respect the most? And then focus on yourself. What is it about you that you're most afraid to see? Consider the answer to be a weakness ready for you to confront or a strength ready for you to own. Because a lot of times if we're afraid of having a relationship with somebody, if we're afraid of whatever's in our future or whatever, that's something a lot of times that's within ourselves that we need to just try to think about and ask. And then, do you have strengths but you may also have some weak points? So what are your strengths that may also be considered a weak point? An example of that is I was told, for years, Paula, you're just too overzealous. You're just an overachiever. You're too this and you're too much this and whatever. I took the Strengths Finder test and I referred to that, I know, a couple of months ago. If you guys haven't heard of that, there's a book called Strengths Finder 2.0. It's from Gallup and they do this personality test. Anyway, so I took it and my number one strength was an activator. So as an activator, I will be told, hey, this is something that'd be good for you to do. Here's something that would be good to accomplish, whatever. Well, I will take action on that to make that happen. And I see it through and, it's just going to happen. And I do what I can to make it happen. And so realizing that all those years where I thought that was a weakness and I needed to kind of dumb down what I did, or how I came across, and realizing now that was an actual strength, but that strength needed to be kind of organized because I was kind of going at it like a bull in a China store. So I had to kind of hone in on how I approached that strength. Does that make sense at all? I hope so. But anyway, I want you to just kind of see how sometimes your strength can also be viewed as a weakness. And then do you have, and then, just try to think of examples of that or, how you can work through that. And then what are the blessings that have come to you because of maybe your family? What are some blessings that have come from some of the belief patterns and some of the family history in your line? I think some of it's pretty great. I can think of a lot of great things that came to me through my family history, through my family. I loved our family gatherings. I loved being able to get together with grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins and all that jazz. It was so much fun. I remember being the popcorn girl. Whenever we had family evening, I was the one that had to go make refreshments, which meant I had made popcorn. And I knew how to make popcorn. So that was cool. Anyway, there were just different things that we did while we were growing up that were actually good. So it wasn't like all bad. I don't want to paint that picture. But what are some blessings that have come from this? And then even some of the things that have come, let's say bad, some of the bad things that have happened in your life. Maybe if you've experienced divorce or the death of a loved one or whatever. What are the blessings that have come from that? Okay, so you may want to just kind of think about that and just kind of realize and just show gratitude for the blessings that have come to you through your family history, through your life experiences, through your different perspectives. I have been through some really bad relationships. My last one was my worst one, no doubt, hands down. But I will tell you that the blessings that have come from that are enormous. And I could probably write a book on the blessings that I have gained from that experience. May one day even be able to share that story, but for now it's not going to be told. Not to everybody anyway. Some of you guys know, but it's just one of those things where just so many blessings have come from that, and so much I have learned. The person I've become. I just felt like I had a choice, to become bitter or better, and we all do that. We all have a choice to do that, and you choose what you become. So, what are the blessings that have come to you because of that, and what gifts have you gained, and what lessons have you learned from even being in a friendship with somebody else or having a relationship with someone else, and then what kind of changes do you feel like you want to make? And then last, life is nothing without a connection to the Lord. Nothing. You've got to have a connection to the Lord. And then also connection to people. Because we were not meant to live here alone. We were not meant to, just be kind of a hermit in a whatever. To just kind of be by ourselves. So we do need to have those connections. It's one thing I love about the single adult program is, oh my goodness, I have amazing friendships. They're just such awesome people. And the people I've learned from, it's incredible. All right, so I've given you an extremely watered down, very rushed version of that, just to kind of get you thinking a little bit. So share your thoughts if you want to share your thoughts. But what are some things that you got out of that? Any thoughts you had while we were going through that at all, or?
Yeah.
Hey, Paula.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, when you were going through a list of some of the things that would be considered generational, did you have this? I kept thinking, how'd she get my family history? Because I could almost tag everything. Oh, I wanted to say something before I started this. Hey, Jim.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So that, and then like a lot of stuff, man, just so much stuff was popping in my head as you were speaking about things that I can identify as generational from my mother. And I think the biggest thing probably for all of us is all going to boil down to mindset, our mindset, and being able to see that there is a limitation. and I've been able to kind of have a breakthrough of that because of you, and with my time with you, and personally, one-on-one and through group, that poverty mindset. And as I was sitting here thinking, what do I want the most right now? Right now, I want a great job.
Right.
And for the first time in my life, I feel like not that I deserve it, but that there is enough for me. There is enough great jobs out there for me
Yes.
to get. There's enough great jobs out there for everyone to get. It's
Mhm.
not just for some select few of people. And I think that that's been my biggest thing. I saw a mother who just constantly, it was a victim. Now she's a hard worker. She's a very hard worker, but she was always the victim, and she always had to settle with whatever was handed to her. And I'm just so grateful, just what she could find. She could be grateful for what she got, but at the same time, it wasn't what she wanted. It really wasn't what she was worth. Like,
Right.
she could have done way more. She had a more knowledge base and had more experience, and she could have done better, but I don't think she had the capability. And even now, she just believes it's just not for me. It's not meant for me to have in this life.
Mhm.
And so I picked that up. And
Right.
so I've totally picked that up. And so the biggest thing for me is, you know what? There's enough in this world. There's enough money. There's enough love. There's enough everything for all of us.
Amen.
And
All right. That's awesome. Thank you. You're so cool.
you're welcome.
Thank
So-
you. All right. And then we had Brian and Jennifer. Let's go to Jennifer, and then Brian Kellogg.
And me.
Go, you're good.
Oh, me.
Yeah, go.
Jennifer.
Yeah, go.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to share a little bit of my story that I've shared with a lot of people. After 20 years of a relationship where I just felt completely empty, and I felt like the victim, and I couldn't get over this victim mentality that really disabled me. I started going to this therapist, and I saw him every week. He was a wonderful therapist. And he asked me the second week I was with him, he said, why don't you write down your experiences and start journaling things that happened in your relationship? And I did that the first week, and I came back to him and I said, I can't do that. I'm having PTSD. PTSDs. I'm traumatized from this. It is not a good thing for me. So what I decided halfway through the week was that I'm going to start a journal, and I'm going to write down every spiritual experience I've ever had. Every time the Spirit has spoken to me, every time the Spirit has inspired me, every time I've felt the Spirit, every circumstance in family situations where I've felt the Lord involved. And it took 9 months. I ended up with a journal that was 2 inches thick. And I came to him at the end of the 9 months and I said, Damon, I'm completely healed. There's no more bitterness in my heart. I don't feel like a victim. I'm not angry. I'm done. Thank you so much for guiding me on this path. The Spirit has healed me. And it was through that action of just inviting the Spirit to take part in my healing. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, making that spiritual connection that makes such a huge difference. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, and Brian Kellogg.
Yeah. So one of the things that really kind of hit me is, growing up, my parents were really good to me, and in a lot of ways. But one of the things that they weren't very open with me. And I think part of that was because as a teenager, I just kind of did what I was supposed to. Like, yeah, I got in trouble sometimes, but I didn't need like the why behind things, and my kids are a lot more questioning and stuff like that. So, with my kids and in my relationships, romantic relationships, I try to be a lot more open, and get into why, why do we keep the word of wisdom? Here's why. Why do we take the sacrament? Here's why. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I've noticed is communication. Like, I think my parents' communication between each other was really good, but I know they were not as open as I am, with my kids, or even like with their friends. Like when I would overhear conversations and stuff, like it didn't seem like they ever got into like really deep conversations. So that's one thing that I've noticed. And then, as far as healing, I kind of like the steps that you outlined there, like what you want out of life and what you're willing to do to get there. And, like Jim was saying, getting to that place where you can forgive is really huge. Journaling is really good there. Therapy, just taking it to the Lord and, just doing those little things to work through it, where you can get to a place where you're not focusing on a grudge or focusing on that victim mentality, but being able to let it go and turn it over to the Lord. So those are a couple things that really stuck out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Jonathan, again, thank you for sharing that. Okay, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. That there is something that there's something to be said about being open and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing yourself to feel, even if it means you're going to take a chance and be hurt. That was something I was in my conversation with my brother earlier today. I was like, why not take that chance? Because their daughter's 5, my niece is, and she's just a really great kid. And I said, why not let her know when she's 20, 25 that you did give it a second chance, instead of saying, oh, I was too scared. I was too afraid. Is that what you want your story to be? So think about that. If you're letting fear inhibit you, think of yourself 10, 20 years from now. What do you want your story to be right now? Are you going to be telling your kids, oh no, I couldn't do that because I was too afraid? I was too afraid of what? Getting hurt, or of actually having somebody love and care for you? Or I was too afraid of learning from whoever that person is that the Lord has put in my life. There are so many friendships and relationships you can have. I've had so many friends through the years that I value deeply. I mean, these people have come into my life, and oh my goodness, what I've learned from them. And I know that with some of them, I'll be friends for a long time, and I'm very grateful for them. So there are so many different aspects of life that we do have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable to. We do need to be able to connect with the Lord and trust that He's going to guide us, that He's going to be there for us, even if it does hurt. It's a learning experience, right? All right, any other thoughts or comments from anybody before we move on to our next topic?
So, Paula, I wanted to make a comment about
Awesome.
you hit on vulnerability. And I think when I first started in this, on this webinar, I was really afraid of being vulnerable. And it was pointed out by one of the participants last week that they were amazed at the 180 that I've taken and allowing myself to be vulnerable with Jonathan. And I think the biggest thing that I want to talk about on this is, you guys have talked about, how you put away your past. I think the final step is forgiving yourself. Like, yeah, we can hold grudges for our parents or our past relationships or whatever. It's not until we forgive ourselves that we can truly be vulnerable on the level that we need to be able to have a healthy relationship. So I just wanted to say that.
Amen. And that's a great lead into the topic of forgiveness. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome, cute girl.
So I do want to talk about forgiveness, because a lot of times holding on to a grudge or resentment or whatever does prevent us from being open, vulnerable, or trusting somebody else, even ourselves. And I do totally agree with Jennifer that we do need to forgive ourselves. It was the hardest thing for me to do, was to forgive myself with my last marriage. It took me a few years. I will just be upfront. It took me a while to say, I'm okay with this, because I kept going, even to the therapist, but I could have done this, or I could have done that, or I should have done, or whatever, right? Like, I was so beating myself up. And it was so hard. It was so hard to forgive myself. But being able to do that was freeing. And it's not easy. So it is a process. Please do not think that forgiving anyone, even if it's an ex, even if it's yourself or whatever, do not think for a second that that's an easy overnight process. I was given a CD, and I don't remember who it was or what it is. I'll have to look it up. But it just came to my mind that really helped me, because I remember my first hurdle was going to be forgiving my ex. And it was something I don't remember exactly the title, but it was something to the effect of, forgiveness does not equal trust. So, because I felt that if I forgave him, then that meant I had to trust him again. And that just wasn't the case, which for me was very freeing. So, and there was a leader of the church that did the CD. Well, I don't remember. All I got out of that was, I did need to forgive him, but I didn't have to trust him again. And then it was like, oh, I'm good then. I'm good. Because because that was my biggest hurdle with that one. I mean, not that forgiveness came easy, but I was able to do that and be okay with just not trusting them. I don't have to trust them. So, it's just different aspects of forgiveness within ourselves or within others is pretty huge. It is something that we do need to do, because it is, I think quite honestly, it's one of Satan's greatest tools to hold us back. Because if we don't forgive ourselves, if we don't forgive others, we're really blockading our progress. That's pretty much what it does. And whether it be our family history, whether it be our exes, whether it be wherever our mindsets come from, whatever it is that you need to forgive. Got to be able to move on and move past that, to be able to become who you need to become, and to be with who you need to be with, to allow yourself that openness, that connection with the Lord, that connection with other people, to allow yourself to trust again in other people. For me, I didn't have to trust my ex, but I can trust other people, which may seem weird, but for those of you that know my situation, you're like, amen, sister. Okay. Jennifer, did you have another comment?
I did actually. I read the book, The Peacemaker, or The Peacegiver, or something like that. And I learned for the first time in my life that, I thought I was like harboring bad feelings towards like people that had wronged me in my life, and like that it was between me and them. And that book helped me realize for the first time that when somebody sins, that sin is already forgiven through the atonement. And we are actually blockading ourselves from Christ. Yep. Instead of that person that has wronged us. And so when you think about it that way, it actually makes forgiving them a little bit easier. And I also learned that forgiving somebody does not mean that what they've done is okay. It just means that we're fulfilling the promise that we made to the Savior, that we would let it go and that He would make up the difference. And so I just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think I'd like to get that book. That sounds like an awesome book. So thank you so much for sharing that. Very true, very true. All right. So any other comments or any other, anything else you guys want to add?
like you were saying, it's not an overnight process. Sometimes it takes a while, and it takes a lot of different things, not just the spiritual stuff like prayer, scripture study, going to the temple. It's not just that. You have to work through that. Like, you have to almost convince yourself that it's okay to forgive that person. Like, you have to logically talk through it to have your mind help your heart, your emotions, to like think through that and be able to let it go. And there's that piece of it. And then sometimes we get to a point where we want to forgive and we just can't, and we have to have the Lord take that from us. And sometimes it takes a little patience. Sometimes we're like, take it please, and he's like, I'll take it, but in my time.
Right.
So I've definitely had that experience, where I've done everything I felt like I could do. I was like, I need you to take it, but it took a little while.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, any other thoughts? All right, so along the lines, wait, am I missing somebody? Somebody need to say something? Nope, I think we're good. Okay. Along the lines of forgiveness and also of, belief patterns or whatever. A while back, I sent my webinar panel a little what to do instead of ghosting someone. Do you guys have that by chance pulled up? For those of you that had that. So first of all, let's define ghosting. If somebody want to share with me what ghosting means?
It's when you just disappear instead of, telling somebody that you're not interested, basically.
Awesome.
And I'm guilty of it, and I've also been ghosted, so both perspectives.
Well, and it's basically wanting to avoid a confrontation. It's like, I don't know if I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, don't want to whatever, right? So let me just not respond to their text. Let me just, not return their calls or whatever. And quite honestly, people, it's kind of rude. So when you're, because there's a way to end a relationship with somebody and still be friends. I've done it. There's still a way to be still be with somebody. And a lot of times, just being honest with them about your feelings is the number one thing, but in a nice way. You don't want to go across attacking somebody, because it's never about them. Hold on, we got some sound. What is the sound? Okay. All right. It's never about them. If you're feeling something, it's about you. It's your feelings. It's your thoughts. Okay. So if you're not feeling it, here are some things you can say that would not be horrible, but still be okay to say. Like, hey, I had a nice time with you, but just don't feel a spark. Or maybe some people end that with, hey, I had a nice time with you, but I think I just want to be friends. Okay? You're in friend zone them right there. Thanks for reaching out. I'm not interested in going on another date, but I appreciated our conversation. You really are wonderful, but I am not going to pursue other connections. What?
But I am going to pursue it.
Oh, but I am going to pursue other connections. Sorry, thank you. You really are wonderful, but I am going to pursue other connections. Okay? But I've heard other people say, hey, you're a great person, but I'd like to, just be open to date other people. There's another great way of doing that. I realize I'm not ready to date. Wishing you all the best. I have a lot going on in my life right now and know I'm not able to prioritize a relationship. You could also say, thank you for a nice date. I didn't feel a strong connection, so I don't think it's right to go out again. It is better to be upfront than to ghost somebody. Way better. Thank you for sharing, whoever's sharing the screen there. Oh, Jennifer. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, so yeah, so that is just awesome. The way better to do, and I love the whole aspect of you just sharing how you feel and letting them know, I'm just not feeling it. I'd really love to be friends. I think you're an awesome person. If you're going to go out with them to begin with, you're going to feel like they're a great person to go out with. I would hope you'd feel that anyway. So if you're going to give them your time and then you're just not feeling it to move forward with them, let them know that. And you can do that in a nice way, still be friends, still be awesome. It doesn't have to be this mean, bad, confrontational breakup. It doesn't have to be that way. Any questions on that? Any comments? Any other ideas?
I mean, I think I really agree with you. I've made some great friendships with people that I've dated, and when you are able to kind of get that closure and shift it from romantic interest to friendship, I think it really helps things, And I'll also say, if you don't, it can get really awkward. I ghosted somebody and then I saw them at Rock the Dock and it was a little awkward. But, I couldn't figure out how to say, I thought you were awesome. And then I had this conversation with your ex and wow. So, I think that's some of it. Some of why people ghost is some of it's the convenience thing and some of it are like, I don't know what to say here.
Right. And you don't have to say everything about what you feel if you're in that kind of a situation. So in that situation, hey, I think you're awesome. I'm just thinking I just want to stay open to date other people. I'm not really, interested in dating romantically, but I'd love to be friends. Just still a great way of saying that without, hurting other feelings or whatever.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with O'Brien. I appreciate that. Okay, any other comments on that one? Okay, I just drew a blank on next week's topic. And I left the notebook I had my notes in is in a different box or bag because I moved this weekend. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. But yeah, so we'll be here next week. Oh, what was that topic? I'll figure it out. I'll get back to you on that one. Forgive me. I've had kind of a busy weekend with moving. But anyway, I will just talk to you guys later. You guys are so awesome to share Sunday evening with me. I really appreciate you so much. And I appreciate you guys being willing to share your thoughts and your comments with me tonight and share a bit of who you are and what you've learned from it. I will talk to you guys later. See you next Sunday. Bye-bye.